Rathalos Blademaster, everybody should have him on their account by now, and he is going to be very good, but he does have a lot of requirements that make him so good, which makes him tough to fit into every clan boss team out there. Now, obviously, unkillable teams are really good, but sometimes it's hard to add in all the things that you need. One place that I think we can utilize him very well is in a traditional clan boss team. So that's what we're going to try to do today. Welcome on the Deadwoodjedi. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video. As I said at the top, we're going to bring Rathalos Blademaster in a traditional clan boss team. Now, one of the tricky parts with him is his passive ability, the HP burn that gives him 50% more damage. That's kind of the big thing that you have to bring in. Not every team can really accommodate an HP burn champion, so it can be a little bit tricky. Or if you do that, you're giving up something else, which is obviously less than optimal. One of the harder places to bring him in is a traditional clan boss team, which is what we're going to try to do today. As you can see, I have a rather unique team that I'm going to be trying to build him with, where we've got champions like Riho, Valkyrie, Tuhanarok, and Anchorite. Now, this is obviously, pretty high end. But remember, you can always drop something to make it a little bit more functional for you, right? I think Skull Crusher would be a good replacement for a Valkyrie, right? Martyr would work well as also. You can always bring in a Lydia or even an Elva for that speed champion where I have Tuhanarok in. And of course, well, Riho's fairly irreplaceable, but there's a bunch of champions that can do a really good job for you, whether that's a Geomancer, whether that's a Tyrant could be a really great option for you. There are a variety of champions that can fit well in teams with Rathalos. And so I wanted to show this one because I think this is probably the best team. This one particularly is the best combination of champions to maximize Rathalos' damage, not necessarily your full teams. Now, I did try to record this once already. I did it against Spirit Affinity, but Rathalos' weak hit, City on that, and it wasn't as good as I wanted to showcase. Still did one key. He still did an awesome job. Not the worst in the world, but I wanted to see what we could do if we were going against, a better affinity. And we have the best affinity for us right now in Force Clan Boss. The reason why it's best affinity is everybody's either neutral or strong affinity against this Clan Boss head. So I think it should work out really well here. So I don't want to spend too much time going over everything. We'll look at the kits once we get into the run itself. But I can show you the setup really quickly here. And, this is who we have. We got Riho as our lead. Valkyrie in here, of course, is going to give us a counterattack and shield so we stay alive. Rathalos is just here to do damage. You'll notice the 1-turn delay. We open with the A1 before he uses his skill with the increased speed buff. Tuhanarok here, she's bringing a lot. She's bringing decreased attack. She's bringing increased defense. A lot of stuff for us. But she isn't essential to this team. And then, of course, we have Anchorite, who's going to be the buff extender, also going to help cleanse the stun for us if we didn't have Riho. That's what he would do. I could actually bring in Godseeker Neri, be just as good, or any buff extender and be just as good, but I had Anchorite built up, so we're going to utilize him in this team. But let's look at this in the calculator really quickly here so you guys can understand why Rathalos actually makes this team even easier to use than normal. So the comp that I'm using is the White Whale Lydia team. I will have that link down below in the description of this video, along with this particular speed tune here. Now, if you can see here, this is what it looks like normally, without Rathalos doing Rathalos things. I turned off his A3, so no increased speed buff, and it syncs usually around turn 7, depending on the speed you're using. You can maybe sync all the way around turn 9 or so, and you can see it syncing when the skills start to be replicated. Basically, it looks exactly the same turn after turn after turn after turn. This is the order is not changed, right? And that's what we're looking at here. Now, one thing that you can do, and I think this is one thing that makes Rathalos actually, excuse me real quick. All right. One thing that you can do, and I think this actually makes Rathalos even better, is when you do turn on his A3, he actually makes it sync faster. So as you can see here, we turn it on and look, and now it's syncing on turn 4, one whole cycle earlier than it would otherwise. So it actually syncs up a lot faster than normal in this team. So one of the things about having Rathalos here, I think actually makes these teams work really, really nicely together. But yeah, we're going to be getting 2 turns here. We're going to have Valkyrie's going to have us a shield and counterattack for both AoEs. It will fall off by the time we get to the stun here, but we'll have the increased defense from Tuhanarok, which will be on everybody for the full fight. And we'll have block debuff from Riho for the full fight as well. So we will be affinity friendly on this team. So that's what we're doing. That's the run. So let's actually see what the run looks like. Okay, as we jump in, it is full auto. I don't have to do anything with my hands. It's just going to run perfectly, or at least the way it's designed to run. Now, one of the things is I have Riho in the lead, and that's so she can take the stun. Definitely, I could have Rathalos in the lead for his aura, but I don't want him taking the stun. Part of the reason why is I have him built very heavy attack based, and so he's not super tanky. He's going to take the stun, and he's going to get whooped on it. So instead, I'd rather have, instead of having Rathalos with 2600 defense, I'd much rather have Riho with 4000 defense taking that stun instead. I think that's going to help us survive a lot longer in this fight. And it's not an unkillable team. There's no time limit really that we have to worry about as far as surviving. So we can go well past 50 turns. I don't think this team will particularly, but we could, right? That's definitely a possibility here. Part of the issue though is with no ally protection, the stun will eventually kill us. And I just imagine that's going to happen pretty close to turn 50, maybe not exactly there. One thing we could do is have Valkyrie try to put up, you know, the counterattack and the shield a turn earlier. That's certainly an option. It's not ideal in my opinion, because the stun ends up beating through it, and it's, I don't know, it just doesn't work as quite as well. We end up dying from the first AoE as opposed to that. Now, if we had things like ally protection or guardian gear, a couple sets of guardian gear would go a long way. But this being on my account, I can only build it with the gear I have available, and I don't want to break every build in order to do that. So it's not quite like being on the test server. I can really use anything that I have available to me. So there's some limitations as far as like what we're going to be putting together here, but I'm very happy with this team. You're going to see we're going to keep those debuffs up for the full fight with a decreased defense counter, decreased defense, decreased attack, weaken, HP burn, even decreased crit rate. All of those are going to be up there pretty much for the full fight, allowing Rathalos to really come in and do maximum damage on these fights, which is always really nice to see. So you're also going to see he's going to slap pretty darn hard as he comes in. You can see his A1 doing 142k, not too shabby, right? A2, oh, there you go. That's the A3 doing 197, so almost 200,000 each one of those hits. That's that A2 with the 200% bonus. 800,000 on that is a very nice number. And then of course, you know, the counterattack with the A1 without the debuffs up there, it's gonna drop down to 60,000. That's basically nothing. The rest of the time it does a really good number. So you need to, one, you know, recognize a counterattack only does 75% damage. So it's not, you know, that's not a good indication, right? That's a counterattack hit for 140k. When he's actually doing his A1, it's going to be, you know, considerably more than that, right around 200k, 270 with that. There's that 581 that is with the 200% damage, right? He puts up good numbers. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to build this team in particular is I wanted to introduce counterattack. Every time Rathalos takes an attack, whether it's counterattack, ally attack, it's going to count towards that, you know, the 5 skill usage or that 200% passive ability he has. So more counterattack, more ally attack means that he's going to proc that passive ability more often. And that's really good because obviously it does crazy amounts of damage. So the more we can do that, the better off we're going to be. And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, you know, or one of the things I really wanted to do in this team was to put all of that together as much as possible. And so we were able to do that, right? So we get counterattack. That means he's getting essentially 3 attacks every turn, which is letting him proc his ability very, very often here. 8 attacks in the cycle because he's not taking the stun, right? So it's pretty awesome to see him get all these extra attacks and do all this extra damage along the way. And you can see we're only 14 turns in and, you know, well over 20 million damage. This team slaps. He slaps. The team slaps, but he really slaps. So definitely very fun to watch. Anyway, let's go ahead. I'll show you the guys' gear that we used on these champions, and then we'll jump to the end of the run and you can see the results that we got. All right, let's take a minute and take a look at our champions. Now, obviously, you know, I've kind of pieced together some of the gear, not wanting to break down some of the builds that I already have. The big thing for me was getting to the speeds we need and try to maintain a semblance of survivability, basically around 3,000 defense and 40k HP. You can see to Hanorok, who we're leading with, I broke up her Relentless set. That's what she usually has here. But we're at that 271 speed, which is more than we need, but does work for this build here with enough accuracy to land her debuffs. Masteries really just went down the offensive tree. Again, I didn't want to waste my gems and build her out with other stuff that wasn't necessary. Defensive tree would definitely help her survive a little bit longer. Also, we have here Riho Bone Spear, who is going to be our stun target. I do have her in stalwart gear. Actually happen to have that on her. 256 speed is what we're looking for with this. I did build her defense out pretty high, like around 4,000 defense, which is kind of what we want to have for a stun target as much as possible, really. And it just kind of worked out nice and easy to build her that way. Rathalos, obviously, I built as much to the nines as I could with, crazy amounts of stats as best I could. 218 speed is what we were going with here. 100% crit rate, 290 crit damage, 6,200 attack, just really trying to maximize that as much as possible. Then offensive, defensive, masteries to kind of help with survivability a little bit and get some, extra counterattacks potentially in there. Valkyrie, obviously, the key here is speed and defense. That's really all I care about. Did build her with almost 100% crit rate, and she will hit very hard, so it definitely helps to build her crit rate up to 100%. But almost 7,000 defense. That's really what I was aiming for at that 255 speed. Her speed is a little bit touchy, so you definitely want to find the right number there. So make sure to play in the calculator for that. And then anchor right here, again, 223 speed. Speed was the main thing here. 3K defense, 40K HP, kind of what we're looking for, offense and defensive subs or masteries on that. Well, Riho almost made it to the end. As it is, 85 million, I think, is really good. Just as impressive, though, is Rathalos with half of that at 40 million damage. That's pretty... Yeah, that's insane. That's an insane amount of damage just doing literally raw damage. 40 million is wild numbers. So Rathalos obviously is really, really good. But, I mean, again, there's so much setup that goes into it. You don't have that HP burn. I mean, take away 10, 12 of that million. Like, it's an insane amount that goes away. The counterattack is really valuable. Having him get more and more attacks to proc that 200% passive is just huge. So take that away and you're losing, I don't know, another 8 million maybe. So it's definitely, there's some setup that goes into it. And this is part of the issue with Rathalos that we all have to keep in mind. So the big thing to keep in mind with Rathalos is that he's not going to be great for everybody, right? This is not a ninja. This is not a Sun Wukong where you can just plug and play him and have him be amazing off the bat. If you're one of the few people that have waited to max him out, probably a good idea, because honestly, he's a little tricky to fit into every comp the way you want. And it's tricky to utilize him with everything that you need, right? That said, it's not like you can't find a ways to use him and use him really, really well. But it's always going to be a little bit harder. And actually, the more advanced the comp is, the harder it becomes. Adding HP burn is such a big addition to your team that fitting it in with so many other things that's required can be a little tricky. If you're running, say, a Myth Fu team, which is probably one of the top tier teams and maybe the most utilized right now, it's going to be really good, but you're going to be probably sacrificing the aura from Fu Shan. You're going to have to run at much higher speeds to really maximize it. In those cases, you probably want to bring in a Geomancer to give you all the things you want, right? HP burn and weaken, as well as what Rathalos brings himself in the decreased defense. It works, and it would work extremely well. You're going to do crazy damage, but also the requirements become that much higher as far as the speeds needed to make that team work without the aura. Very similarly, if you wanted to use him in, say, a Myth Air team, well, you're not going to have any room for an HP burn in that case. That's going to make it really tough for you to maximize your damage with him. If you want to use him in a Bat Eater, same kind of concept, right? You're just bringing him in. So he's going to hit hard. He's going to get you that 200% off the passive. That's definitely going to happen. But you're not going to get that 50% bonus from the HP burn, which is such a massive damage boost. That can be an issue for you, right? So there are things that you're never going to really be able to fully maximize them unless you're really running a suboptimal team, which is kind of an ironic thing to think about with him. What does that mean, though? If you're an early or mid-game player, Rathalos is great. He's a great addition because he does have those wonderful things. And when you run a slower clan boss team like a double man-eater team or a Emic team, right? Or even a Helicat team, you have more room to bring in the kind of support champions that Rathalos needs to really shine. So while this was a fun team to be able to put together, I don't expect anybody out there to have a Tuhanarok and a Riho and a Valkyrie to make it work. And yes, there are workarounds, right? This is based off a Lydia White Whale team. So there's definitely other champions we can utilize in here, right? Any speed champion without the turn meter boost, just the 3-turn increased speed buff can work for the Tuhanarok part. Any counterattacker, whether it's Martyr or Skullcrusher, can work for the Valkyrie. Even, hypothetically, a targeted counterattack champion like a Tomoe, right? Could potentially be able to do that for you. And then, all you need to do is find a way to survive, but that becomes the trick. You don't need a Riho necessarily, but you have to find ways to be affinity friendly. You have to find ways to bring in all the debuffs you need, and you have to find ways to sustain and survive. Now, this team, we did pretty good damage. I think we were 1 key right around turn 40. So it's not like you have to survive 50 turns to make it, a viable squad, but but it does become harder and harder. So these are all the little things that we need to keep in mind when we're building a team like this. Now, admittedly, I didn't have any poisons. If I put 1, maybe 2 champions in the toxic set, would have probably crushed 100 million easily, right? So there's definitely some things you can do to, make stuff even better, even with what I had put together. But we just need to understand, the limitations of this champion and how he can shine. Honestly, a easy double man-eater might be the best comp with him. I think it could be an absolutely insane build and work really, really well for that. But that's going to be the trick, especially if you have a counterattack. If you have a counterattacker, it's going to chef's kiss, right? I'm planning on building that to showcase that because I think that's going to be a really nice one for a lot of people out there and should show you some of the ways you can actually maximize him, even with like a different team, an Emic team, right? Anything where he's going at a 1-1 ratio, but you bring in some counterattack. I think there's some ways to really maximize what you're doing in there. So I'm going to showcase that best I can. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you all watching. Just want to remind you to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And until next we meet on the Deadwood Jedi.